Hello everyone, I'm Katra. If you haven't watched the previous Star Rail video, then I'd recommend watching that one first. This is the counterpart to that video, where I instead talk about everything I love about Star Rail. Also, spoiler warning, I'll talk about the plot of pretty much the entire game. I'll try to limit my mentions of other gacha games, but it's easier for me to talk about what I like here when comparing it to what I don't like about other games. Anyway, without further ado, here's everything I like about Honkai Star Rail as of version 3.6. I don't have much to say about Herta Space Station. It's a very short prologue, and I think it works as an introduction. Let's start on Belobog instead, which is, in my opinion, a great quest and a perfect story to start the game with. I've seen many people on social media say that people overrate this quest and that it's too simple, but you have to understand that it's precisely because of its simplicity that it's so good. In a world where every gacha game and JRPG throws insanely complicated concepts to the story like time travel and dreams and multiple universes, it's refreshing to see such a classic story that's easy to understand. And part of why that's the case is because the quest focuses on the characters instead of being lore heavy. The main two characters of the quest are very clearly Bronya and Seal, with their opposing backgrounds being the source of the conflict between them. You have Bronya, who slowly realizes the truth of what's going on in Belobog and starts doubting Cocolia, and then you have Seal, who hates the people from the overworld but slowly starts to accept them after spending time with Bronya and seeing that they might not all be bad people. Again, even in its inspirations and messages, this quest is extremely transparent. But that's part of its charm, and it works perfectly as the first main quest of the game. It also explains quite a few concepts, like how the Stellarons work and how the Astral Express operates, but it shows you instead of telling you through expository dialogue. And, to top it all off, the conclusion of the quest is perfect. The battle against Cocolia is amazing in every aspect, gameplay, visuals, and especially music. It may not be a perfect quest, but considering it is the first main story of the game, I think they nailed it. Penacony, like I said on my previous video, is weird. It does some things right and some things wrong, so I find it hard to say if I like the quest overall or not. But anyway, let's talk about the stuff I do like about the story. First off, this quest is filled with aura farmers. I don't like using that term because I'm not that young, but I really cannot find another way to describe the characters in these quests. Acheron, Aventurin, Sunday, Black Swan, and to Rest and Firefly all love looking at the camera and spewing some random cryptic stuff to sound cool. This is to the detriment of the story, of course, but hey, I can't really say I didn't enjoy these moments while playing the quest, especially Acheron's. Another thing that the quest does really well is its setting. I love stories where a lot of characters from around the world come together in one spot to do something, like Crossbell in Trails. This is just like that, with every faction we know of at that moment coming to Penacony for the Charmony Festival. And it's the conflicts and interactions between them which were some of the coolest moments in the story, and I wish we would have gotten a few more of this. Like when Sparkle talks to Aventurin, when Acheron fights Firefly, or when Ratio and Aventurin meet Sunday. And part of what also made this great was the mystery of trying to figure out why every faction had come to Penacony and what they were trying to achieve. I'd say the best part of the actual writing of the quest was the story about Misha, Clocky, and Gallagher. I love how they ended up being related to the Astral Express, what Mikhail's motives were for staying behind in Penacony, and the real identity of Clocky. And the whole scene with the Trailblazer putting on Mikhail's hat and being gazed upon by the Harmony was awesome too. I did not expect the twists about Gallagher and Misha, and I appreciate that this part of the quest was easy to understand, at least compared to the rest of the story. And what's easily the best part of this section is that there are actual consequences. Misha and Gallagher are dead, even though I guess they weren't really alive when we arrived in Penacony. But anyway, you get my point. I hate how so many gacha games are afraid to kill their playable characters. Even Star Rail is guilty of this, considering they brought back Tingyun. But hey, so far it looks like these two won't be brought back, and I really appreciate it, even if I do love the characters. The last good thing I can say about Penacony is that I enjoyed the ending, even if it was a bit predictable. The whole part about the first boss fight being a fake out and getting trapped in a dream inside a dream I saw from miles away. But they delivered it in a pretty decent way. But the main focus here is Acheron, who once again shines by simply talking in riddles and farming aura. I kinda wish I had played Honkai Impact 3rd beforehand, so the moment where she says her true name meant more to me. But even without that, it was still an awesome reveal. And easily the best part about the ending is the final boss fight. It delivered, again, just like Cocolia in every single aspect. Visuals, gameplay, voice acting, and music. Might even be the best part of Penacony as a whole, and because I really value endings when talking about stories, I'd say overall, I liked Penacony. Okay, let's now talk about the most recent region of the game, Amphorios. So far, the story hasn't even finished yet, and it is already longer than every other regions, which means there's a lot to talk about here, and I'm glad to say it gets a lot of things right. First off, it is way easier to understand than Penacony, which is already a big plus. The actual events happening might actually be more complicated, but they are explained in such a better way, even throwing you a timeline of all events at the end of 3.4 if you're somehow still confused by them. For a story with cycles and simulations and characters duplicating themselves, they did an awesome job of making sure the player was following along. Another good thing here is that they managed to please both lore-focused and character-focused players. This can be hard to do, because the way you write a quest that's focused on lore and past events and concepts, and another that's focused on the characters and the relationships and how they evolve, is very, very different. And they opted to have the main quest focus on characters, and then have a separate book called As I've Written, filled with lore and stories that are nice to know, but are not necessary to understand the main quest. This is how pretty much every game ever does it. You might be thinking it isn't worthy of praise, but considering how badly they screwed this up in Genshin by throwing really important details in random books, I really appreciate that it's done correctly here. I think the Chrysos Heirs are by far the best cast of characters of any region. I liked Belobog's characters, but they didn't have enough time to be fleshed out in any meaningful way. Here, the quests are so long that every single character has had its time in the spotlight. And even more so than in Belobog, the characters actually interact with each other, and they can act and talk even when the Trailblazer isn't there. And here's the best thing about the Chrysos Heirs: they're not all friendly and nice. Coming from Genshin, and also here in Belobog, Telwofu, and to a lesser extent Penacony, it feels like the characters are not allowed to be quote-unquote bad. I remember when people were criticizing how Aglaya interrogated Tanheng and the Trailblazer and called her morally grey, and I think they all need to look up on Google what the actual definition of morally grey is. That scene is great. And no, it doesn't make Aglaya bad. If anything, it makes her a great character. And it makes her feel more like an actual person than a character. Like I was saying, it's great that not everything is rosy and nice here. Aglaya and Anaxa can't stand each other, Cypher keeps stealing from people, High Silence is a ruthless killer, and Seritra is the very definition of a tyrant. But this is great, it makes the characters feel different, it creates conflict, which then makes these characters evolve and become that much better. It makes the actual nice and friendly characters shine that much brighter. In any other game, I would probably hate Hyacinth. But here in Amphorius, she's like a ray of light, always trying to stay positive even when the world is in ruin. I think the cast here is the best of the whole game, and it's not even remotely close. The bar is set pretty high for the next planet, and I hope they can surpass it. And speaking of a world in ruin, I love Amphorius' setting, and especially that it is darker. Overall, Star Rail is a darker game than Genshin, but I feel like they really kicked it up a notch for its planet. There's a lot of death, blood, and destruction, people get stabbed, burned alive, consumed by the dark tide. In every cycle, all Chrysos Heirs end up dead, Okema is pretty much destroyed, Seritra sacrifices over 1,000 people to gain the core flame of law. Every single place you visit is filled with monsters from the dark tide and bodies on the floor. I used to not be a fan of darker stories, and even still I don't like them a lot, but after playing Genshin, which is pretty much Disney level for 5 years, I've come to appreciate them more and more. And it's not just being darker that makes Amphorius setting better, it's also about being more serious and having higher stakes. From the very start of the quest, you realize you're in a war zone. All of humanity is fighting against this inexplicable phenomenon that pretty much cannot be stopped. And the stakes have never been higher. As of 3.5, we know that if Iron Tomb is completed, the whole universe might end. You could argue that Penacony had similar stakes, but I'd say that it wasn't as serious, and the possible consequences weren't as clear as they are here. In Penacony there were a few moments of comedy and lightheartedness, but here there is none of that in the main story, and it kinda caught me off guard in a good way. A good example of this would be Trippy. You look at her gameplay and design and think she's going to be one way, but then you play her quest and go through the story and she's more like a Master Yoda than a Klee. And I said in the main story specifically because the events have been mostly cheerful, but because they're separated from the main story, I don't think they've hurt the setting a lot at all. All in all, I'd say Hoyoverse has done a great job with this aspect of Amphorius. Alright, let's stop beating around the bush and talk about the actual thing that makes Amphorius great. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the first 4 versions of the story, but they were clearly meant to set up everything for the peak at the midway point of the Amphorius story. For the Sun is Set to Die is one of the best quests I've ever played in a gacha game, and it's not even remotely close. And I do believe it can go toe-to-toe with some of the best JRPG stories too. It is that good, and let's talk about what makes it so great. First off, it is shorter than the previous quests, but that is because there is no filler here. No walking around a new area, no puzzles to solve, no small enemies to kill, no unnecessary conversations. Every single dialogue and every single fight here is important and meaningful. I'd go so far as to say that every single step you take in this quest means something. You might think I'm exaggerating, but one of my favorite details from the quest is that in the sections where you need to walk towards the Chrysos Heirs to fight them, if you try to go backwards, the game will move you forwards instead. It is such a small thing, but for one, it shows that they put extra care into this quest, and 2, it is a beautiful way to tie narrative with gameplay. Another huge achievement that this quest manages to do is explain any question the player might have about the story or about Amphorius. Before 3.4, there were still some details I was a bit confused on, but after playing the quest, everything became clear. For a quest with a shorter runtime than the others to manage to dispel any doubts the player still had, and to do it without ruining the emotional highs of the story is incredible. Like I said before, there are a lot of difficult concepts here, like time loops and simulations, and I was really afraid that the quest wouldn't be able to clear my confusions before the ending. But the system they used, where they explained most of the important stuff on the quest and then left the details for the book after the cinematic, was a great way to make sure the player isn't overloaded with information, but that they still end up getting the full picture. Now let's talk about the soundtrack here, because I don't think this quest would be half of what it is without that soundtrack. The entire quest is pretty much only that one song from Finance trailer and then the song from the cinematic. But both of these are incredible, on par with any soundtrack with some of the greatest JRPGs. And they could not be more different, and yet they are both incredibly free with emotion. The sadness coming from Finance trailer song is devastating, and I can understand why they decided to use it on every single dialogue from Finance Cycles. It just fits so well. How could you play any other song there? And the song from the cinematic is just the complete opposite. A pure release of anger and fury. When the animation started, while I was playing, I wasn't sure if the song fit the mood, because it sounds more like something from Devil May Cry. But after it kicked in, and especially now after I've listened to it countless times, I can say it's a great song and a fantastic choice for that cutscene. Alright, let's talk about the man of the hour. The single reason why this quest stands heads and shoulders above the rest. The character that's easily the best out of the main gacha games, and no one else comes even remotely close. He's such a good character, it almost got me to play Honkai in back third. I'm of course talking about Finon, also known as Kaslana, the main protagonist of the 3.4 quest. A character that's stuck in a time loop to save their loved ones is an archetype that usually doesn't fail to deliver, but it relies completely on the character being able to transmit their emotions and thoughts to the player. If you cannot resonate with the character, then it's a complete failure. Luckily, the English voice actor for Finon on the day of the recording decided that he wanted to deliver the performance of a lifetime, and so he did. If half of the quest is carried by the soundtrack, then the other half is carried by Finon's VA. His extremely depressed tone during the cycles is great, but it is at the end of the quest where he shines the most. That final speech before the animation is generational, and the quotes inside the animation are incredible too. I don't tend to compare voiceovers because I think it's usually dumb, but here I do believe that if you're not playing in English, you're missing out. Now I'm going to hit you with an unpopular opinion, because as much as I like Finon, I think the way the character is written for the cycle segments of a quest is just good. It's nothing I haven't seen before in many other characters with the same archetype. Karen Travers from Scarlet Nexus is pretty much the same. To me, Finon's writing shines on that final dialogue with the Trailblazer and after that. Because where most other loopers either succeed or fail or give up, Finon decides to simply pass on the torch to the Trailblazer so that they might become the deliverer that save Amphorius. And now, his duty passed on to another, he has nothing to do. His one purpose in life is now gone, and he's free to do whatever he wants for the last cycle he's in. And his choice is to unleash all of his anger and rage accumulated from countless cycles to try to break out of Amphorius. This is what separates Finon from the rest. Amphorius will move on to the next cycle regardless of his actions, thanks to the Trailblazer and Cyrene. I know that as I've written, it says that he tried to create a vulnerability to stop Iron Tomb, but I don't believe that was necessary, considering that Trailblazer and Cyrene were making another cycle with the power of time, and honestly, I think it's better this way. You may disagree. But anyway, to fight the destruction for one last time is his own personal choice, and it is a meaningless one, how I see it. But that is what makes it so beautiful. For the first time since his creation, he's fighting not for salvation or deliverance, but because it is his own selfish wish to fight. This is reflected in my favorite scene of the animation, one which I don't see many people talk about in detail. It's the one where, after standing up on top of the corpses of countless Chrysos hairs, he cuts off his own remaining wing before fighting again. The way I see that scene, and the one before where Sephiroth cuts his other wing, is very clear to me. Sephiroth cuts his yellow wing, as if saying that he is not a hero anymore, further emphasized by the fact that he falls on top of the dead Chrysos hairs that he was killed. But Finon stands up and cuts his remaining dark wing. To me, he's saying that he's right, he's not a hero anymore, but neither is he a villain. In that very moment, he isn't the deliverer of Amphorius, nor the flame river of the Dark Tide. He is simply there to let everything burn to ashes, and he manages to land a hit on the nuke. What's possibly one of the greatest feats we've seen from a playable character, and an incredible way to conclude what's easily the best quest in the game. I could talk more about Finon, but I'll leave that for the character section. And I'm done with Amphorius here. Yes, there are more quests after this one, but as of right now, I've only played 3.5, and I don't think I need to talk about it. You can see why I like this blind story so much already. The other versions are good, but 3.4 and Finon carry this entire set of patches from good to great, and I don't think anything released after this will change that. I'm done talking about every region individually. but there's still some things that the story does right that I think deserve to be mentioned here. First off, I love how they've integrated character quests into the main story. Don't get me wrong, I do like some character quests, but I always feel like they're very artificial, for lack of a better word. With that, I mean that having an entire quest focus only on one character doesn't feel realistic in the context of the entire game. Luckily, now they've removed character quests, and I feel like it is much better for the story overall. You can tell that every patch in Amphorius is focused on one or two characters, but they feel a lot more natural because now the characters are actually doing stuff that moves the plot forward. Also, so far, only one quest is focused on a single character. Most of them have two, which also helps a lot with that. There's another benefit to combining character quest and story quest, and it is that now the main story quests are way longer. With this change, they now have more time to properly flesh out the characters, and it also means we have less filler patches, because they can't just release a character quest on a version and call it a day. I've seen many people hate this change, but honestly, all I see here are positives. I also have to give props to Hoyoverse, because some quests here are actually genuinely funny. There's a few that I could mention here, but I want to focus on the Ghost event released in version 1.5. Already from the very start you know it's going to be great, because of that starting animation with Sushang and Ginei Fen is hilarious. Their banter reminds me of Mona and Fischl from Genshin, and it's awesome. The actual main story of the quest is a bit more serious, but it's the small things here and there that manage to get a chuckle out of me. Especially once you finish the quest and get into the minigames. The chat messages on the streamer's side are all pretty funny, even if they can be a bit cringy sometimes. You may think that I'm praising the quest too much, but honestly, the fact that it can get a chuckle out of me is already an achievement. A lot of games, and especially JRPGs and similar games, try to be funny just to fail miserably. Remember Forspoken? But there's some actually hilarious stuff here, and I think it deserves recognition. There's one small thing that makes the overall story so much better, and it's that there's actually a main party of characters instead of just having a single protagonist. Pretty much every single JRPG in existence has a main party. You can't just have one single character for the entire game. Well, I mean you can, but I don't think it's a good choice, and looking at Genshin and Wuwa, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm right. I love the Astral Express. It is a great cast of characters with a lot of personality, and they work together perfectly. The group is really well thought out, with Himeko and Welt acting as the mentors of the younger members. March 7 and Dan Heng are pretty much polar opposites, with the first one being charismatic and funny, and the second one being serious and intelligent. It's also nice that both of them come from different planets, and that they have great backstories. But the main benefit of a main cast is that you will always have a group of characters that evolve alongside the main character and are always by their side. It's really annoying how in Genshin and Wuwa, once you leave a region, you leave all the characters behind. Lastly, I want to cautiously praise that the main cast actually gets characters added to it. I say cautiously because I love that Sunday is now a member of the Astral Express, but I don't think he's here to stay, even though I really wish he would. Spoiler alert for the video itself, two of my favorite characters are Stellar Hunters. But I want to talk more about the group itself here, because I don't want to clutter the character section after this. I really like the Stellar Hunters. They're such a wacky combination of characters, but somehow they work really well together. If you think of them as a criminal group, then they make sense. You have a hacker, a sort of assassin, and then the two big fighters. The fact that their leader is a cat is really weird, but it's these things that make them stand out as a group. And they are considered a criminal group by the APC, however, their actions aren't necessarily bad considering their name and that they are trying to kill the distraction. They feel more like the counterpart to the Astral Express, trying to achieve a similar goal through different means. And I'm glad it's this way, because we already have the IPC and the Distraction as the two actually irredeemable bad groups. We don't need a third one, so the Stellar Hunters having a bit more complexity and being closer to morally grey is great. I feel like most villain organizations in games are just too basic and don't have enough nuance, or that their designs are too simple or similar to other organizations. The Stellar Hunters are a very distinct and unique group of characters. I like them so much I kind of wish the game would let us side with them. We know that the Trailblazers used to be a member of them, and one of the main themes of the game is making your choices. I know it's foolish to believe that they'll let us choose something that could change the story that much, but hey, one can only hope. Before the end of this section, there's one specific quest I'd like to shout out. I usually don't like character quests, but I have to say that Yukong's quest was really good. It's really hard to make the player emotional in just 1 hour, it's harder to make it happen in a companion quest instead of a story quest, and it's near impossible if the quest focuses mostly on an NPC. But somehow they managed to write a great story, with messages about the importance of family, about PTSD, about how war can hurt people psychologically more than physically, and making the player question how the Aeons operate in this universe. Yukong herself doesn't appear much in the quest, but her voice acting specifically in the last scene is phenomenal. It's weird to say that a companion quest for a 4-star character might be one of the best quests in the game, but I cannot deny the quality of it, and so I wanted to give it the recognition it deserves here. Before I get into what my top 3 favorite characters in the game are, there's quite a few things I want to praise here. To me, the characters are the main focus of any gacha game. If I don't like the characters, then there's no point in playing the game. But the characters in Star Rail are fantastic, and I want to go through my reasons why I believe this is the case. First, I love that they are releasing upgraded versions of all characters. You know I love character progression, and what better way to show that than giving an old beloved character a new form. In Vivitor Lunae, Hunt March, the Herta, and now the new Tanheng and Evernight. Not every one of these has some story significant behind it, like Herta, but at least it shows that they still care about their old characters. Many gacha games will just release a character, show them for one quest and then throw them in the garbage. Looking at you, Withering Waves. And I think they are maintaining a perfect balance here. There's not too many of these compared to new releases, but there's enough to keep old characters relevant. I also really like that they're making an extra effort to have some of these be quite different in gameplay. I really hope that they will keep releasing these, because to me, they're even more hype than new characters. And speaking of power-ups, I really like how the Trail vs. Froms are handled. The Traveler's elements in Genshin are not only really boring, but have no deeper meaning behind them, and their gameplay is very similar. In Star Rail, every single power-up the Traveler gets happens because an Eon gazes at them, usually after a big story moment, and each form has a different gameplay and role. They're not that different from each other visually, but at least they all have different weapons. And here is the best thing about the Trail vs. forms, not all of them are garbage tier. In fact, the last two to release, Harmony and Remembrance, are actually top tier. They are making the protagonists of the game actually playable in endgame modes, which is awesome. And let's not forget that you get all of the Eidolons for free too. Both in gameplay and in design, I think the Trailblazer is being handled a lot better than the Traveler. One last thing I want to praise before the top 3 is the amount of characters that are being released. Hoyoverse has released 2 characters in almost every single batch since 1.0, with only a couple of versions having 1 character release instead, and there have been 0 versions with no new characters. They are making new units way faster than Genshin, which is crazy because I'd say the characters in Star Rail require quite a bit more work than the ones in Genshin. Creating the actual abilities might be a bit harder in Genshin, but the VFX and camera work in Star Rail are about 50 times better, and I'd say these require a lot more time. Having worked as a game dev, I know how much time and effort these things can take, so I really appreciate the amount of characters being released while keeping a high quality standard for all of them. Alright, let's now get into my top 3 favorite characters in the game, starting at number 3, which is Kafka. I really struggled for the number 3 position because there are a lot of characters that I like that are about the same as Kafka, those being Acheron and a lot of the Chrysos Hairs. In the end, I've chosen Kafka simply because I feel like she's one of the characters who will end up having the most story relevance in the long run. The main thing going on with Kafka is that every time she shows up, she's there to remind you that you have the freedom to choose whatever you want. And you know how much I love games that let me make meaningful choices. One of the many reasons she's one of my favorite characters is her story quest. The fact that you can just refuse her request and skip the entire quest is incredible. I did not expect that at all from a gacha game. So far we know that she cannot feel fear, and that's her reason for joining the Stellar Hunters was because Elio promised her that in his written future she would feel it. I feel like that's such a cool concept. I don't think I've ever seen something like that in a game, and I really can't wait to see what happens with it. I don't want to talk about her gameplay because her animations are awesome, but I feel like that's a given in Star Rail. And even though her trailer is easily one of the best, I don't think it's fair to talk about stuff outside the game. I wish I could say more about the character, but there's not much more to go on, and that's part of what makes her great. She's very mysterious and we still know so little about her. But it's clear she has a big role to play in the future, so I hope she'll live up to the expectations. My second favorite character is Firefly. Like I said, I really like the Stellar Hunters, and Firefly is my favorite of them. I mean, how could you not like her? She's a human weapon, a cute girl inside a robot that was created to fight propagation, and has the ability to destroy entire planets. The sole survivor of a fallen nation from over 5,000 years ago, as far as we know, she's even older than some eons. Just off of concept and design alone, she's incredible, but it's her personality and story that make her even better. Her struggle with anti-body loss syndrome, how she has joined a group related with finality when she herself wants to avoid her own fate. Her friendship with the Trailblazer and how she feels when she finally meets him again in Penacony. How she can go from kind and supporting to ruthless killer in the span of a second. I also love her voice acting. I can't speak for the other languages, but in English, she's amazing in both forms. And I love her gameplay simply because she brought back the brain mechanic. I don't like how over time the game has become more about brute forcing everything and ignoring mechanics, so to see Firefly bring back break into the meta was awesome. There's not much more I can say about her, so I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room here, because I know many people hate her because of how she acted in Penacony towards the Trailblazer. And to that I say, well, what did you want her to do? She saw a close friend that she hadn't seen for a long time. Did you expect her to just say hi and walk away? I know many people disliked when the reveal that there was a girl inside Sam happened because they wanted a cool male character. But come on, just because you got something else than what you wanted, you can criticize something that's good. I feel like when it comes to Firefly, there's no middle point. I only see people either love her or hate her. But for me, I really like pretty much everything about the character, so she's in my top 2. Okay, well, if you've seen the story section, you should know by now who's my favorite character in the game. It's Finon, and it's by a landslide too. It's funny because before 3.4, I don't think he would have even made my top 3. Don't get me wrong, I liked him before them, but his character was just a bit too basic. The classic hero who can do no wrong and always fights for what's right. But I prefer characters that are more complex, and luckily that's what we got in 3.4. I won't repeat again why that quest made him the best character in the game, so let's talk about all the other things that are special about him, starting with his design. His base design is pretty good, but his ultimate design is beyond incredible. This is the kind of design you would see in the final boss of a JRPG, and I love it. It is so over the top, it's insane, but it fits his character perfectly too. The dark elements from the Flame River and the golden elements from the Destruction, the halo with the symbol of the world-bearing core flame, and the fact that his face just looks like Nanook's, all represent him perfectly. So it's not like the design is just cool things thrown together, they actually make a lot of sense. And let's also talk about his gameplay. I don't like talking about animations because pretty much every single character in this game has great animations, but Finon's just soar above everyone else's. He transforms the entire battlefield with his ult. His attacks cover the entire screen with their visual effects. And let's not forget an often overlooked aspect, which is the sound effects. They are fantastic too. The sounds and the music when he enters his ultimate and when he leaves it are phenomenal. And I don't think I can say much more about the character. In the end, a player's favorite character is usually the one they resonate with the most, and that for me is Finon. Every single aspect of him, from design to gameplay to story to voice acting, is, in my opinion, perfect. He's such a good character that, to me, he stands toe-to-toe with some of the best characters in JRPGs, and that's saying something. I already mentioned this a bit in the character section, but by far the best aspect of this game presentation is the combat animations and visual effects. Every single character in the game is incredibly well animated and has a ton of VFX, even the 4 stars. Not every character is a light show like Finon, but even the simplest ones like Natasha or Lynx have a lot going on if you analyze them carefully. But the real winners here are the latest characters. I feel like the longer the game goes on, the crazier the animations and VFX get. Finon and Castrice's animations are just not real. They change the entire background, they have like 5 or 6 different animations, and most of them are the size of the entire screen. And Finon just straight up changes his entire character model during his ultimate. But it's not just the playable characters that shine here, it's also the bosses. Every single boss in the game has the same level of quality in their visuals, sometimes even better. And I also want to give a shout out to the sound effects, because they are often underappreciated and they're also incredible in both playable characters and enemies. Hoyoverse understood that for a turn-based game, you compensate for the lack of action with better visuals, and they delivered. Very recently, they've started adding 2D animations to quests, and while we've only seen 2 so far, I really want to praise them, because they've both been amazing. Castrice's animation really delved deep into her backstory in a heartbreakingly beautiful way, and Finon's animation was just pure hype moments. The only thing that saddens me is that they're not releasing one for every character, but I totally understand why. Both these animations are pretty long, and they're both made in-house. It might not seem like it, but there's a lot of work that goes into this, especially considering how well animated they are. I'll also say that they've managed to integrate them into the game in a way that feels completely natural. I really hope that they keep doing this, and I can't wait to see more of them. I don't like talking about the music of a game, because it's a pretty subjective thing, and I don't really understand it too much. But I will say that I love the music in Star Rail way more than the music in Genshin. And that's for one reason only, because of the vocal tracks. I feel like a JRPG or a game that's similar, like Star Rail and Genshin, needs to have vocal tracks. If you use them sparingly on important fights and moments, they just add so much more emotion. I do like the voice tracks in Genshin, don't get me wrong, but I don't think you can compare them to the tracks in Star Rail. I'm pretty sure 50% of the reason people fell in love with this game is because of the Cocolia fight and the track that plays in it. And they've kept releasing banger after banger since that song. Hope is a Thing with Feathers, Proi Proi, and Flares of the Blazing Sun are also just as incredible. Tracks like this are a big reason why Hoyomix is so beloved. Honkai Impact's third's biggest songs are all vocal tracks, and they have millions and millions of streams on all platforms. I don't know why they don't want to release tracks like this on Genshin, but hey, this is the Star Rail video, so I'm not complaining. You should know the drill by now. This is the section where I mention all the little details that I like about the game and that can be compiled into any other category. To me, a lot of these small things are more important than some of the things I've mentioned previously. A lot of what makes a gacha game good or bad is in these details. Also, most of these come from me comparing Star Rail to other gacha games, so be prepared for a few mentions of Genshin. Anyway, let's start. 1. The game is free to play. It seems like such a stupid thing to mention, but I really feel like people forget about it. They'll either complain about the gacha system when spending money is your choice, or they'll compare the game to AAA games, which cost $70 or more. You do not need to pay to play this game. Let's keep this in mind when talking about it, even if I feel like I can sometimes be guilty of not doing this. 2. I appreciate that doing your dailies isn't as bad as other gacha games. I want to spend as little time as possible on dailies, and Genshin and Nikki make me lose a lot of time. Luckily, Star Rail is pretty good, and it can get even better with just a couple of small changes that should hopefully be coming soon. 3. Listen, if you've seen my previous video, you know how much I hate the auto combat in this game, but hey, at least it has automatic combat. They very well could have not added that to the game. 4. You can do the same weekly boss 3 times. You aren't limited to only doing each boss 1 time for no reason. Looking at you, Genshin. 5. Building artifacts seems a lot easier than in Genshin. I have plenty of the gold resin and I barely use it. I haven't tried the new systems with elixirs and the feathers in Genshin, but still. Looking at the number of good artifacts and materials I have in both games, I feel like Star Rail is just a bit better here. 6. This is an unpopular opinion, but my favorite part about the game is that they only have 1 or 2 events per patch. I may not have a job right now, but when I did, it was really nice knowing I could still keep up with Star Rail without having to invest too much of my time. 7. I mentioned this briefly in the character section, but they deserve extra praise for the speed at which they're releasing new content. New maps, events, characters, quests, and more every single patch is a lot, and they're releasing one every month and a half, way faster than other live service games. 8. I really appreciate that you can buy 5-star weapons in the shop, even if they're only the standard banner weapons. Bronja's weapon is still pretty good, so it's great to be able to buy it instead of relying on luck. 9. The story of the Fate event might have been bad, but hey, at least the game has a collaboration. Looking at you, Genshin. And it's clear they put a lot of effort into the characters, and I also like that they are pretty strong. A lot of gacha games tend to make collaboration characters on the weaker side for some reason. 10. I like that there's a menu with a timeline of all the quests in the game, even with some secondary quests. It helps a lot for some people like me who have trouble remembering events or remembering in what order they took place. 11. I will never, ever use a skip button in this game, but I appreciate that there's one. Pretty much every single game in existence has a skip button for dialogues and cutscenes. I don't know why people hate so much on it. It's there if you want to use it. If you don't want to use it, well then just don't. 12. I want to give quick props to the Penacony side quests, especially the one called Envision a Rose Forthcoming. I really love video games where choices matter, and I was really surprised to see a quest like that here. And even more surprised to see that it was actually well written. 13. A lot of the gems you can get in Genshin come from exploration. Here there's also chests in the overworld, but because there's less of them, they always give you a free temple every patch. They could have made us work for it, but they didn't, and I appreciate it. Alright, that should be everything I like about Honkai Star Rail. A surprisingly long video. I didn't expect to talk as much as I did, but I think a good chunk of the script was about version 3.4 I'm fine on. Again, I cannot stress enough just how good that whole quest is. This video wouldn't be nearly as positive if that quest didn't exist, because not only it is amazing, but it also made me see the rest of the game even a more favorable light. And it has also made me more hopeful for the next planet. Edo Star didn't sound like a place that would have a great story, but after Euphorius, I trust that they can write something great. Even though I do like the game, I feel like I'm kind of forcing myself to write, and that there's too much text compared to how much I actually enjoy it. I mean, if I'm writing 14 pages for Honkai Star Rail, what's going to be the number for Trails or Kingdom Hearts? I've also thought of maybe giving the game a score at the end of the review, but I'm not sure about that. I don't like reducing an entire game to just a single number. To say that, for example, Star Rail is a 7 out of 10 wouldn't mean much, and it also wouldn't reflect how I feel about the game, because version 3.4 is like a 9.5 out of 10, and the rest of the game hovers around a 6 or a 7. I'd just rather say at the end of the video if overall I like the game or not, and here the answer is yes. Also, although I've kept comparing Star Rail to Genshin this entire video, funnily enough, I don't think there are two games you can compare. I was wondering if after watching both reviews I'd find a better one, but they're just different to me. There's not necessarily one that does a lot of things better than the other. I prefer exploration and combat in Genshin, but the story and overall presentation are better in Star Rail in my opinion. What's nice is that they complement each other quite nicely. They feel different enough that you don't get bored out as much. I think whether you like one or the other more is just a matter of preference, so I don't understand why so many people try to compare them, or claim that one is definitively better. It makes no sense. Lastly, I've been wondering if maybe I should teach the format of making 2 videos instead of 1 per game. When I started making these, it seemed like a good idea because, for one, 2 shorter videos are more digestible than the long one, and for another, it makes it more clear whether I like or dislike something specific of the game. But it's true that making it this way is also slowing me down considerably, and I'm not releasing this as fast as I'd want. I'm not sure what to do here, I'll have to think about it. I'd ask you guys what you think, but somehow I don't think there will be anyone in the comments. Nor will there. Anyway, that's everything I wanted to say, and with that, I take my leave.